Well, this is a special treat for me today because I reached out to you. I found your book. I am obsessed with your book. I found it when I was pregnant and I started reading it and I was like, can this baby come already? Can I start reading this out loud? Lil Miss Hot Mess, welcome to Emotional Support. I am so happy that you are here. This is literally such a treat for me because I just, anyways, there's so much that I'm going to get into, but I just want to thank you so much for joining us on my little podcast here. This is so fun. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Where are you coming from?
I'm actually coming from sunny Tucson, Arizona.
Ooh, I love that. I actually love Arizona. I shot a movie there one time and it was really great. It was in Phoenix and it was just really hot. I didn't realize how hot it really got there, even in the wintertime.
It is really hot, although it's sort of cooling down now. We're getting what I would call a Tucson fall, which is pretty nice. But yeah, the desert vibes are great. It's wonderful.
I love it. It's good energy, you know. But the best thing that I remember is we were shooting right when it was like we shot a little bit, I think, in the summer and then came back and did a little bit in the winter. And it was the funniest thing for me because it was like 100 degrees and it was still super hot, which is rare. I don't think it's always that hot in the winter. But these ladies were feeling themselves and they were like, we bought the Uggs, we bought the fur coat. We don't give a shit. We are wearing this right now. And they were walking around in full fur ensembles downtown Phoenix.
God.
And I was like, it is hot.
Well, that's the difference between Phoenix and Tucson too. Tucson's a little bit more of like a hippie vibe. So I haven't seen too many fur coats out here.
It was a moment. I was okay with it. I was like, you know what? You go, girl. You bought that. You earned that. You earned that check. You make it. But I'm so happy to have you here. I want to get right into this book because I think that it's so fantastic. This is the one that I have. I know that you have two books and I'm sure that there's so much more to come, but The Hips on the Drag Queen Go Swish, Swish, Swish. It's the only book. There was no wheels on the bus in our house. There's none of that. It is just the drag queens. How did you even start this journey of being a children's author? Because I think it's one thing to have, a biography. It's one thing to share, nonfiction, fiction, all this stuff, but children's is so specific and so beautiful. How did this all begin?
Well, so for me, it really started with Drag Story Hour, which started in 2015 in San Francisco. And I started doing it in 2016 in New York. And it's a program that sounds like exactly what it is.
Exactly what it
drag
is.
Queens, drag kings, drag creatures of all kinds, reading books to kids in libraries and schools and bookstores and all these great spaces.
Did that start in San Francisco or was it in New York?
So it started in San Francisco by Michelle T. and Virgie Tovar and Julian Delgado Lopera. And they were running this organization called Radar Productions. And we're looking for ways to bring queer family programming to the masses and had this idea that like drag queens and kids would obviously get along, like who could you imagine being better friends than small kids and drag queens? And then it quickly took off and kind of took the country by storm and we brought it to New York and Los Angeles. And now we have chapters all around the country and all around the world in places like Arizona, in North Carolina, in Texas, in Tokyo, in Berlin, in Mexico City, all these wonderful places. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fab. Well, I'll tell you, it makes total sense to me because drag queens are the most fabulous, people in the entire world. They're magical creatures. It's pure magic. I'm telling you, when I was 2 weeks, lady was 2 weeks old and I had a very hard recovery after I gave birth. And the only thing that I wanted was just light, really fun television. So I put on Trixie Motel, right? Trixie Motel. And it was the first time that she actually focused and clocked something, you know what I mean? She was do with everything. And then Trixie came on and it was like the world stopped for Lady. And she just was like, who is this? My life is changing. Truly. I mean, and the eyes, they got so big. I thought they were popping out of her head. It was crazy. But it's so true. I love that there's Drag Queen Story Hour. I was not even familiar with Drag Queen Story Hour I had not heard of this before. Now, do they read just to little kids, or is it, can I go? Like, I have to bring my child. Like, what's the backstory of Drag Queen Story Hour?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for most events, anyone is welcome, kids of truly all ages. We do kind of focus more on like ages
Children.
maybe 3 to 8, you know, but
Right.
but truly above or below. I've had like truly babies that are fresh out of the womb. The parents are trying to get me to hold and sing and read to. And yeah, I mean, we read books of all kinds. We do like to focus on things that deal with LGBT identity or with, you know, making friends, being your most fabulous self, you know, challenging bullies, that sort of thing. But we also read a lot of the story hour favorites, like, you know, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom and Everyone Poops and that kind of stuff as well.
You know, just the normal ones.
Just the normal ones, you know, just push a few boundaries here and there.
And how did you get into, you know, how did you become Lil Miss Hot Mess? Like, it was drag culture something that you had always been a fan of, you know, being in the QIA plus community? Like, what was it for you that really drew you to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways I always wanted to be a drag queen even before I had the language for it. Like, I was definitely always that kid who liked to perform, who liked to dress up, who liked to, you know, be a little bit dramatic here and there.
Sure,
and
as we all do. Yeah.
As we all do, you know, and I was that kid who would put on my mom's high heels and her, you know, robes and throw a towel over my head and call it a wig and direct my neighbors and shows in the backyard and things like that. So, yeah.
You were a boss.
I was a boss. I was a director. I was a diva, all the things. But it wasn't until I actually moved to San Francisco, fresh out of college, that I started doing drag. Because, it just called to me. And it was really a kind of renaissance of drag in San Francisco in the mid 2000s as well. So
what was it like for you the first time that you went in drag and performed? And I don't even know if you performed the first time or what it was, but what was that like for you? Did you, I mean, I can only imagine it would be just so incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it opened up a whole new world for me. I'll say that I started going out in drag and kind of testing the waters a bit before I actually performed. Sure. And yeah, I mean, I will say that I earned the name Little Miss Hot Mess. That was not something that I specifically chose, but you know, I had a few too many Long Island iced teas a few too many times. And
we've all been there.
So, Exactly. And so the name just kind of emerged and then it stuck. But I always like to say that I'm here to remind everyone what a hot mess the world can be, not so much what a hot mess I am these days. A little bit less these days, yeah.
You're like solid. It's like everyone around you, like that's the mess that's like going on. No, my best friend, he was his name is Xander, and he performed and competed in Best in Drag in Los Angeles, which was like amateur, like, and I guess I don't know if it would be called amateur, but it was like first timers like trying it out. And his name was Beverly Adjacent, and his performance was all Pretty Woman, and it was amazing. It was like an ode to Pretty Woman and Julia Roberts, and it was like so fabulous.
Oh my God,
and he always, you know, will do drag for Halloween and stuff like that. And it's just like, I, you know, I guess I've never even told him this, but I can see just such a difference in like attitude and confidence and just like feeling so comfortable. And, you know, he wouldn't identify himself as being a drag queen full time and like wanting to perform. But for him, when he goes in drag and he has the sexual energy with him, and it's amazing. I just see such empowerment. And I think that the world needs to see how empowering drag really is. Like it's unbelievable. I don't know if you know, but I hosted, I didn't host, sorry. I host this show. I was a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race. And I'm trying to think what season that was, but it was with Raja and Delta Work and all the gals. And I just remember I went there and Lily Tomlin was the other guest judge, who was an icon in and of myself, and I was just like, it was like 9 a.m. when I met her, and I was like, hi, like freaking out. But I just remember she was just so in awe of all of the girls, of just every little detail. And then when Rue came out, and I met Rue, I just was so blown away because beyond like the beauty and the dress and all of that, right? It's just this aura of like a superstar character. It was like meeting like Minnie Mouse for the first time. You know what I mean? Like
Totally.
as a kid, where you're just like, I can't even believe this. And I've seen such a shift, and I'm thinking that must have been at least 10 years ago, 8 or 10 years ago, a while ago when I did it. And I had introduced my cousins who are now 14, and I've slowly introduced the younger ones that have gone to RuPaul's Drag Race. And drag culture to these children is like the best thing that's ever happened to them. Like all they want to do is see Xander in drag. They just want to watch RuPaul's Drag Race. They want to just, and it's so amazing because I'm like, I never had that as a kid. Like that's something that I would have craved to be around. And that's what I was going to ask you, like as a child, like what were some of the outlets that you found? Like now these kids have, you know, drag shows and fabulous books. Like they have this culture that they're a part of. What for you, like culturally, or what did you kind of feel you connected with?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I was an 80s kid, and I feel like I connected a lot with like the typical stuff like Disney and, you know, The Little Mermaid and The Lion King and all that stuff. I was also a huge He-Man and She-Ra fan. And like looking back on that, there was so much kind of like queer innuendo and just like queer, proto-queer content there. But yeah, I mean, I think I always, even though I was watching a lot of the mainstream stuff, like I identified with the women, or I identified with the villain, or I identified with some aspect of it that wasn't necessarily like the mainstream love story or the mainstream hero story. And I guess too, you know, I always really loved fantasy and things that had magic in them. And I do think that, like you were saying, drag is a form of magic, right? It's this, like, totally enchanting, transformative, like totally fantastical thing, but something that we also can do with like whatever we have around. Like we don't actually need to be, you know, X-Men or wizards or whatever. We can actually just kind of transform the world around us ourselves.
No, absolutely. Were you ever a fan? So for me, my favorite movie was Serial Mom. Ron Waters, and I was obsessed with Divine, and I was obsessed with Pink Flamingo. I watched it way too young, like in single digits, way too young. But it was amazing, and I was just like for me, Divine was everything. Like were you familiar with her like when you were younger, or were you not introduced to that? I think my mom introduced me to things like very young and very like wild horror films. Like I was obsessed with horror. Like I was a very strange child.
Oh, I wish. No, sadly, I don't think I knew who Divine was until high school, or maybe even like early college. You know, I had Ursula, who of course was modeled after Divine, but I didn't have Divine herself. I think the closest I had to knowing what drag queens were really was like through Shakespeare and through like, I don't know, like the occasional kind of like cross-dressing performance on TV, but a lot of it wasn't really drag. You know, it was like Rudy Giuliani on Saturday Night Live, which like is a very different thing than a drag queen. Let's be real.
It's a very different thing.
Yes.
It's a very different thing. No, and I think that that's what's so special now, you know, is looking at this younger generation and seeing all the different, you know, content and, you know, books and TV shows and just idols that they can look up to. It must be so cool. So when you're doing, you know, your drag queen story hour, do you have kids that come in drag that are, you know, what is that like? You know, what stories can you share with us about kids? Because I think that this needs to be, I think the reason why I'm so drawn to your book as well is because you're normalizing drag queens. You're normalizing queer culture. I think that there is such, you know, it's just such a topic that needs to be stopped. And I want to obviously like get into all that, but it's something that needs to just be like, what's the big deal? Like, why are we making this a crime? Why are we making this a big deal? Like, it's fabulous. Like, it's the best thing that's ever happened, you know? So what are can you share some stories or something that, you know, when the kids do come and drag, or parents, you know, of what, you know, they're saying?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just so special when kids show up in drag or in whatever kind of dress up they come in, because you can always
Yeah.
see they have that transformation. You can tell that they're extra proud, they feel extra fancy, they are showing off something that they've probably like thought about and worked on and
Yeah.
crafted and made really special. And a lot of times it is this kind of weird mishmash of like an old Halloween costume and like a
Yeah.
Disney princess costume and like all these different things that sort of get thrown together. But to me, it like oftentimes it does make me sort of see myself in them and feel like I'm getting to kind of relive my own childhood through this program.
Right.
I didn't have the chance to like do drag per se, but I did love to dress up. And so getting to sort of see these things come together is really wonderful. And one of my favorite moments of Story Hour was it was after a Story Hour. And it was this group of girls who were in the library but hadn't actually come for Story Hour. Like I think they either showed up late or like just happened to be there. But they immediately just flocked to me, and like in my mind it was like we were having a slumber party at the time. Like it was like we were like braiding each other's hair and like stuff like that, because they were so sweet, they were so innocent, they were so curious, and like they just had a million questions about who I was and why was I in the library and like why that day and how did I get the glitter to stick to my face and was that my real hair and like and like yeah, they were literally just sort of like touching my hair and asking all these questions, and
the curiosity.
it just felt so intimate, yes, and curious and just special. And there was something like extra special about the fact that they weren't even there for Story Hour, and yet they still got to encounter me in this space and get to ask all these questions. And yeah, it's it kind of felt, I guess, in some ways like preaching beyond the choir in that moment,
right?
Especially as
No,
well.
totally. Oh my gosh, totally. And what is it like? Have you had well, let's talk about it. You've had some backlash, and as pretty much the entire queer community has, right?
Right.
From I like to say, like, this is not a political podcast, but this is also a real life podcast. So like things do have to, come up.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, I feel very strongly about this because this specific topic of when it comes to children, because now I have a child and I would like to raise my child the way that I was lucky enough to be raised, where I accepted everyone, no matter what they looked like, felt like, tasted, no matter what it was. Like, you know what I mean? Like every color of the rainbow. And I think that I was very lucky. I grew up like in dance competitions. And so for me, there was no sexuality was so fluid, like everyone was everything, you know what I mean? And I'm talking baby, you know what I mean? Like I said, my first movies were Pink Flamingo and Serial Mom, and it was very interesting. My favorite person in the entire world was Dennis Rodman and Howard Stern, and I was obsessed with Dennis Rodman because he was my everything and more. And my mom was from Chicago, and my grandparents still lived there at the time, and I was obsessed with basketball and the Chicago Bulls, and I didn't like Barbies. So anytime someone would give me a Barbie, I would cut her hair, I would buzz it, take magic marker, and I would magic marker Barbie's hair, whatever Dennis Rodman's was that game. Right? And then I had the Dennis Rodman doll in the wedding dress, right? And like when he came in drag, and I just was so fascinated by this human. I just thought, like, you know what, this is the coolest thing in the entire world. Here's this like uber masculine man, right? Who's showing up in a fucking wedding dress to a book signing. Like, I mean, like, are you kidding me? And normalizing, like, it was not a big deal. So anyway, and Howard Stern, I was obsessed with as a kid too. My mom used to always listen to it. So I'm very moved by these things because I was raised in a way where everything was so normal. I was never taught that, oh, you shouldn't do this, or oh, don't do that, or oh my God, oh, gay, oh, bi, it was like whatever. It's not a big deal. Overly. Anyways, so there are a lot of people out there, including Marco Rubio, which I read had a huge issue and came out with a whole campaign against drag queen story hour, or, and now, books are being banned, and, there's just so much going on. What is it? Do you think that people are so against drag culture? I just don't understand, because you look and we talk about Shakespeare, for instance, right? Like, hello, we're teaching Shakespeare in school. How do you think that they performed as women?
Right.
Who do you think Juliet was? Like,
right, exactly.
What is it? Do you think that, how can we wake people up to be like, we're not trying to, change and turn your children? Like, what is it?
I think it's a couple things. I mean, I think mostly it's actually a distraction. I mean, I think that they're trying to sort of wag the dog and say, draw attention to this issue that they think will be this huge wedge issue, and they think will scare people, when in reality, it's a way of kind of covering up for the fact that, like, these right-wing politicians aren't doing anything. They're not making anyone safer. They're not making anyone richer except for themselves. Like, they're not actually doing anything to support the people who elect them or who live in this country. And then on the other hand, I think that it's also like, it's rooted in the same old homophobia and transphobia and white supremacy that we've been dealing with forever. And, they kind of they're always looking for something to sort of make into this culture war. And in some ways, drag queens reading to children, I guess to them seems like an easy target. But I think it's also kind of more broadly like a war on imagination. It's that they don't want kids to grow up to be creative. They don't want them to think for themselves. They don't want them to develop the tools to imagine a better world. I mean, that's what drag is. It's literally transforming yourself so that you can transform the world around you and make it a more fun and educational and fabulous place. And that to them is threatening, because they want people to be afraid. They want people to, stay in line and to do what they're told and to not ask questions and, certainly not challenge their authority. And yeah, I just think that that's sad. I mean, it's like, we need more kids who are taking apart their Barbie dolls and making them, into their own drag characters, or, who are writing weird plays in their backyard, or who are doing all these sorts of creative things, because that's what gets us, like, to the next point. Right. And that's what kind of, like, gets us over the finishing line when it comes to different forms of social justice. But they're so afraid of that. Yeah.
They're so afraid. And, it's interesting that you say it's about the imagination, because there are so many, like, boys that I knew growing up, right? And growing up that they would dress and put on a fairy princess outfit. That didn't make them gay. That didn't make them, trans. This was not a thing. It was about using their imagination and having fun. I mean, it's not like, oh my God, don't let them do that. Don't let them do that. So that's the joke. I remember there was some viral video that was going around, and it was, they were saying, like, it was like a voiceover of some politician being like, drag queens are, making your children gay. They're turning this. And then it showed, like, this amazing drag queen who was performing, and all the kids that were coming at a party, and they were all dancing and just having a good time. And I was like, where is the problem here? Like, show me the problem, like, show me the issue. But you're right. It's about imagination. And I think that is what's so key, is that we need to keep imagination going in children, because we're losing it. We're losing it, and we're losing kids also, to just looking at their screens 24 hours a day. Like, what is that about? Like, I'm like, guys, come on, let's pull out, like, let's read books, and listen, I'm a firm believer in TV. I am, like, someone that watches it. My daughter falls asleep every night to Dahmer. Probably not a great start to her childhood right now. But we're gonna go with it. It's a great show. But I think that it's so key that people are still writing books. Now, now I know that you have the hips on the Drag Queen Go Swish, 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 which I absolutely love. Also, the illustrations in this are unbelievable. Like,
aren't they? Yes.
How did you find your illustrator?
So I was so lucky. I did my research and kind of reached out to friends to see who their favorite kids' book illustrators were. And someone recommended Olga de Dios to me. And she was primarily publishing in Spain. She lives in Spain.
Wow.
She's a Spanish illustrator, and author in her own right. And not many of her books have been translated into English. And so I was kind of lucky, I feel like, to get her before she makes it big over here. I was like, let us get her over here. Let us do it. And what I loved about her work was that so much of it is like monsters and creatures and like these fantastical characters. And I was like, that's someone who can do drag. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you can make like a sort of like cute, lovable monster, then I feel like you can get that kind of like quirkiness, that playfulness, that edginess of drag. And she's just, hit it out of the park.
I'm originally from San Francisco, like with the Bay Area. So I'm from Los Altos area, but I remember just being a kid and driving through Castro Street and just being like, oh my God, this is so pretty. Like, it's so magical. Like, oh, it's glitter. And so like when you go through this and I'm like reading this book, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to show Lady like all of this. Like, it's so amazing. And now you have another book that just came out.
That came out, this summer. It's called If You're a Drag Queen and You Know It. And so it's a play on If You're Happy and You Know
Clap your hands. I'm like, that makes any sense. Like, that was a really like slow reaction to that. What has that been? What has that been like? Did you go around since COVID is done, but since things are a little bit more open, were you able to go around and do Drag Queen Story Hour and kind of promote that book?
Yes, I finally got to tour again. So I got to go to San Francisco and LA and Portland and Seattle and New York and Philly and Boston and Provincetown.
Oh my gosh, you went everywhere.
Yeah. I went everywhere that I had a place to stay, and a friend's couch to crash on. And it was so nice because my first book did come out during the pandemic. It came out like right as the pandemic was getting started. And so I hadn't done an in-person story hour for over 2 years. And it was fun getting to do some of the virtual ones and knowing that kids could come from all over. But, I so missed like being in that space with the kids who are dressed up and who are smiling.
There's something right about being
dancing along.
Yeah, there's something about being in person and feeling just that energy and being able to go with that. Have you ever come to LA to do a reading?
I have. I used to live in LA, and so I've done a bunch of readings there. I know, but a lot of it was during the pandemic, so I wasn't doing too many readings then. But I got to do a couple at Skylight Books and the Natural History Museum and the Children's Museum in Santa Monica. Yeah.
Wow. And are you planning on doing more books?
I am hoping to do more books. I haven't quite confirmed the next one just yet, but yes, there should be more books coming out for me in the next couple of years.
How can we make this a TV show as well? Because that's all I kept thinking.
That is the biggest question. We've tried pitching TV shows, and I don't know why it hasn't fully caught on yet. But if anyone out there is listening and wants to talk, I'm more than willing.
Oh my gosh,
to make this
really?
a TV show. Yeah,
they're not. I would think if I was a TV executive, I would like jump at this as a cartoon.
Right.
Like, I would jump. Just the names of the characters, like Cinderella, like that was like all of these, like I just like, why would you not like look at this? I'm like doing this as if it's not your book and like you don't know what you're looking at. I'm like doing this for the audience because I'm like, hello, like look at this right now. No, I mean I can't even tell you. I would absolutely jump on this. Now, are you performing drag on your own in Tucson? What is your own personal life look like on a day-to-day?
Yeah, well, so actually my day job is that I'm a professor at the University of Arizona. So I get to literally teach the children, the slightly older children in this case.
Wow.
And so doing drag is sort of part of my work, but it's just one part of my work. And my background is in media studies and public humanities. And so thinking about, how do we make the world a better place through research and community action and those sorts of things.
Oh my gosh. And do your students know about Lil Miss Hot Mess?
I give them a taste. I don't want them to get like too deep in it right away.
They have no idea. Like they're with an icon. Oh my God.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't name drop like the Katy Perry Saturday Night Live appearance, right off the bat, but I do let them know that I am here. I know. I probably should. I definitely get some points for being there.
I forgot to ask, how did the Katy Perry SNL thing happen?
Oh my God, that was amazing. That was literally, I was finishing up, I think, my first year of grad school and like literally like furiously writing a paper and got this message from a friend of mine whose agent was like, we're looking for drag queens. And he was a dancer on Broadway. And so I was like, okay, well, if I finish this paper in time, then I'll go to the audition. And so I went and like literally like smeared on like 10 minutes of makeup, like didn't shave, didn't have it all done. And they really loved it. They like liked the messiness. They liked the kind of androgyny of it. And so, yeah, that I got to be on the show, and that was one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Oh my gosh. Were you a dancer when you were younger and like older as well?
A little bit. I was also a figure skater. So, you know, I have that kind of like flair for performance.
My husband's mom, I won't say her age, but I will say older, okay, is still ice skating every single day.
Oh my God.
She competes, like she does. She's an ice dancer. And she still does she still competes. Like,
yes.
Her teacher
oh my God, I love that.
is like this world renowned, like Olympian, and just, it's so incredible. Now that is a very, very hard sport.
That is a hard sport. Yeah. And I mean, I was a kid. I quit, I think around age 11 or 12, I think because it felt too gay at the time, which is so sad to think about that being the reason. I think I just, you know, again, I might not have fully had the language, but I think it felt so feminine and uncool at the time that I eventually moved on from it. But yeah, I wish that I had still continued to do it. And actually, you asked before about my very first time performing as Lil Miss Hot Mess. And so that was actually on ice skates, not on ice, but like I had the guards on and I did this whole kind of like Nancy Kerrigan style routine. For this pageant. Yeah.
Oh my God. It was for a pageant?
It was for a pageant called Star Search at Tranny Shack. I don't know if you remember them from your San Francisco days.
No, I left when I was 9 and moved to LA. But I really would have. I would love if I was 9 years old going to Star Search there. That would be amazing. I would be like, wow, the coolest kid in the entire world. Now you're giving me ideas of where I can take my daughter. Yeah, I thought like drag brunch at Hamburger Mary's was wild, but I think I'm gonna have to take her there. No, that's so amazing. Did you win the competition?
I did not. I like to think I came in second, even though there wasn't an official runner-up, but I felt like I got the attention of a runner-up queen. So
you felt in your heart. Wait, I really quickly want to get back to you being a professor, because I just have so much I want to get into this, because I guess I read that, but I didn't get into I didn't think about that. But is it so cool? I mean, what an awesome thing to be able to, I'm going to say, teach children, you know, in drag when you're reading to them, and then be able to teach children who are not children anymore, but are really they're on the verge of being able to really, truly transform our world. What is that like? Is it like empowering? Is there like frustration behind that? Like, do you see, you know, the age like where you're like, oh my God, you're on the verge of being able to like really change so much and be able to do so much?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's pretty inspiring. And one of the things that I like about my specific position is that we are encouraging students to figure out how to have an impact on the world. Like our whole ethos is not just about learning for learning's sake, but is really about kind of like personal enrichment for the sake of public engagement or public enrichment. And so, it's nice to see them have all these ideas about ways that they can go out and change the world. And in some ways, like, I really don't think it's actually all that different to be, you know, reading stories to little kids and then teaching, you know, teenagers and young adults. And one of the things that I've done as part of my scholarship as a professor is actually published on Drag Queen Story Hour and thought about, you know, what is the pedagogical value of a program like this? And so, you know, I've published this article with a collaborator, Dr. Harper Keenan, and we think about things like, you know, how drag queens use humor in order to deal with difficult or stigmatized subjects. And we think about how, you know, drag really creates this set of relationships, these chosen families, and, you know, what kids can learn from that and how you can kind of build the trusting classroom space from that. So there's a lot of ways that I do really consciously think about, you know, what it is we're doing with these kids and then how I can apply that to these older kids that I'm working with as well.
No, I completely agree. And I think, you know, talking about like dress up and imagination and stuff like that, I was very much like you, where I had a neighbor, bless his heart, Thomas Fliedner, and he was a like prodigy at the piano, and I took full advantage of that. And I was like, we are performing for my dad's friends and my mom's friends. And like whenever they would come over, I'd put on performances. And I was like I said, I was a dance competition girl. So my main dance was to Hello Dolly. And I had this big, like this big boa hat on, and I had my mom would hand dye my jazz shoes, and then she would rhinestone them. Like we were queen of rhinestones. And it was like that. Fabulous. So I performed Hello Dolly at like 7 years old on the piano like this. Like really, I mean, it's a sight to be seen that no one really needs to see. But I remember like when I would perform, right, and I would put on the costume and I had, you know, the big fake eyelashes on and all of that.
Oh my God.
It was not only using my imagination and being able to fulfill like this like performance art that I was doing, but truly it was when I was the happiest with my mental health. And I found out way later in life that I lived with bipolar disorder, but I had coping mechanisms that I didn't know were coping mechanisms, which involved my performance and performing. And I think that children using their imagination, dressing up, that is a form of mentally healing themselves and emotionally healing and being able to be. It's not even like, oh, here I am. I'm going to be a drag queen. No. It's about using that imagination and healing. Like there's a sense of healing behind doing all of that. Did you help with your own like emotional and mental health when you started doing drag when you were older? Like, was there a sense of kind of, I don't know, like maybe I'm just projecting that on you because like I felt that even though I wasn't a drag, like for me, that was my version of drag, you know, and I still feel that way. I think that's why I love acting so much because I can kind of heal that mental instability in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, drag, I always think of it as like a set of armor. Like it's really about kind of like building up this empowering, protective, like armor that allows me to step out into the world with much more confidence, with much more kind of assertiveness, being able to really speak my mind in a way that, you know, I'm confident, I'm out there, I can, you know, give a lecture to 100 kids or do all these sorts of things in my everyday life. But like when I put on the drag, that's when the sass comes out. That's when the humor comes out. That's when like the fun really starts. And so, it is exciting and fun to get to experience that transformation. And, you know, some performers like really think about their drag persona as like a real character, right? Like they really kind of like develop a backstory and a biography and all this sorts of stuff. But for me, I always see drag as like just allowing different aspects of my personality that maybe don't have like the spotlight in everyday life to really come out and shine. And that's something that I also think that kids can learn is like, how do you find those elements of yourself that maybe sometimes you wish could be a little bit louder or you wish could be a little bit brighter, and how do you share them with the world? And sometimes it takes a lot of glitter to do that. And, you know, a pair of high heels and a lot of glitter wig. Exactly.
And sometimes it needs a good fake boob. Like for me, like that's the prosthetic that I need in my life. All day long. I mean, breastfeeding has helped a lot with that goal, but I'm not there yet. I'd like to feel that sexuality. But that's why it's like Halloween is so fun, and you see people really just like truly be themselves and like have like a great time when they dress up. Oh my gosh, this is just like so fantastic. I know that you are helping so many children and obviously adults. And I hope that the world, even though it's a scary place right now, I hope that through light and through love, people stop with the judgment and stop with, you know, this is how everything has to be. It has to be square and boring. Like, I hope people just toss a little glitter and realize that it's not, you know, we're not changing who you are. We're enhancing who you are and allowing you to be comfortable in your body and be the best version of you, and allow children to really shine and be bright, as my baby's like screaming and like making noise. Sorry. I'm like, oh, sorry. But allow you to be like who you genuinely are born, who you're born to be, you know? Is there
Mhm.
anyone that you know, as like an icon or someone that you look up to, that you are hoping to meet and maybe, you know, share this wonderful Lil Miss Hot Mess with?
Ooh, I mean, I do love all of the divas. I'm also Jewish, so I love a good Jewess diva. You know,
Yeah.
I would love to meet Bette Midler one day. I would love to
Oh,
meet Sandra Bernhard one
oh,
day. I would
Sandy
love to
Land,
meet
she's my favorite.
Barbara.
Oh my
Yes,
God, Sandra Bernard.
yes, or Fran Drescher, of course. I mean, these
Oh,
these are all the personas and the icons that I style my own drag off of in many ways. So yeah, it would truly be an honor to get to meet one of
oh
them.
my gosh, oh my God, Sandra Bernhard is my favorite.
Yes, yes,
Oh my gosh.
absolutely.
Oh my God, Fran Drescher. You should do Fran Drescher one time. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sure like
Oh
that
yeah.
is,
Oh yeah.
you are
Got the
inspired
wig.
by
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
nanny.
Yes,
You're
yes. I am
inspired by
very
the nanny.
inspired by the nanny. I am. I am.
I love that. Well, I am going to ask you my question that I ask everyone on this show. Lil Miss Hot Mess, what is your emotional support?
My emotional support, I think drag is a form of my emotional support. I mean, I think that getting into it, having that ritual of transformation, of taking, you know, an hour and a half out of your day to like really just
Yeah.
beautify and transform yourself is something that like no matter how stressed I am, no matter how rushed I am, no matter like whatever headspace I was in before, it's that like transitional moment that like gets me ready to go face the world in a new way
Yeah.
and yeah, hopefully
And
spread a little bit of joy as well.
spread joy, spread glitter, spread love, like
Yes.
spread it all. And do you have any
More.
aspirations, do you think, to be on RuPaul's Drag Race ever?
You know, I thought a lot about it and I kind of like forging my own path and, you know, publishing my own books
Yeah.
and doing my own thing. So, you know, I'll never say no, but it's not
Yeah.
on the immediate agenda
I just
yet.
didn't know if that was like, I feel like, because I've seen so many, you know, queens be able to use that as a platform to jump off on. Not that you need the platform, because obviously look at all that you've accomplished so far, but like a
Mhm.
lot of people do use that. So I didn't know if that was something maybe in the
Yeah,
future,
we'll
but never say
see.
never. Never say never.
Never say never. I don't know if I'm ready for my single to be on iTunes and all the stuff that all these queens are doing now, you know. I'm a little bit more of a simple girl who's just out here writing my books.
I'm a simple gal just living it up in Tucson. I have to say, I have a lot of friends that have moved to Arizona and not Phoenix, like Tucson. And then I'm trying to think, what's the other like really cool, like Joshua Tree type place in Arizona?
Sedona or
Sedona.
Flagstaff? Yeah.
Sedona. A lot of people.
Yeah.
Is there
Sedona's
just
very
such good,
witchy.
like, yeah, so witchy. That's what they
So
keep
witchy.
saying, that
Yeah.
I
There's
would
all these
love it.
vortexes there. Yeah.
They said I would love it
Yeah.
because I'm all about a
Crystals.
vortex. Are
Oh
you
yeah.
like into
Yeah.
that woo woo kind of stuff? Like,
Oh yeah. I mean, with a wink and a nod, but yeah. So yeah, I've got my tarot
sure.
cards, I've got my crystals, I've got my intuitive counselor on speed dial. You know,
Do you have a good psychic?
we're
I'm
here.
looking for a good psychic right now.
I do have a couple recommendations.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to ask you after the
Yeah.
show about your psychics, because I
Yeah.
feel like you're on my speed of understanding.
Oh yeah.
Understanding the gifts that are above our control. Well,
Yes.
anyways, I just can't thank you enough. This was just
Thank
so special.
you.
And how can everyone find you?
You can find me at Lil Miss Hot Mess, Lil Miss Hot Mess on, I was gonna say on all the platforms, but I'm not on TikTok because I'm too old for TikTok these
That's
days.
okay.
But yeah,
it's
so
not worth it.
it's not worth it. Exactly. So find me and also follow Drag Story Hour. We just changed our name from Drag Queen Story Hour to Drag Story Hour. So look for us
Cool.
on all the social media there as well.
Oh my gosh. And then you can get the book wherever books are sold, I'm assuming.
Wherever
That's how
books are
I got
sold.
mine.
Yes.
I
Order
believe
it
I got mine
online.
on Amazon, I believe. And it was just like, anyways, I hope to meet you in person sooner than later.
Same.
Because and in drag too as well, because I need my daughter to see how like gorgeous and fabulous you are, both in and out of drag. Just so incredible. And anyways, all right, well,